We're going to take a quick break, and then we will continue the discussion on Iraq, but from another perspective, the reconstruction effort. Kirk Johnson is with us, and he served in Iraq as an official for USAID. We'll be right back.
Washington Journal continues.
On your screen is Kirk Johnson. And Mr. Johnson, you are described frequently as an Arabist. What does that mean, and how did you become interested?
Well, it means that I have a background in studying the Middle East, and specifically the Arabic language. And I started along that track when I was 16 after a trip to Egypt that my grandmother took me on. And after that, I went to American University in Cairo, and then once I started up at school, that was what my degree was.
And on a professional level, it eventually took you to Iraq. When did you serve and where?
I got there in the very first days of January 2005, and I spent all of 2005 there. First 8 or 9 months or so in Baghdad with the U.S. Agency for International Development, and then the remainder of the year in Fallujah, where I coordinated the reconstruction efforts there.
What did you learn from the experience?
You want it in a soundbite?
Well, this is C-SPAN, so you can take more than a soundbite. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was opposed to the war, but I felt like because of the skill set that I had, that I had a responsibility to try to pitch in.
And did you join USAID specifically to do that, or had you already been working before that?
No, I went over there to work. I had signed a contract directly with AID to do the Fallujah work. I hadn't worked with them before, and when I got to the Green Zone, it wasn't exactly what I was anticipating in terms of how we were running things and what we were actually seeing of the country and what we were seeing of our projects. A lot of it was sort of, we had to rely on word of mouth to see whether or not these projects were actually functional or not. So by the time I got to Fallujah and started to get my own eyes on the projects, it was a little disheartening.
In 2005, what was the security condition like? Did you travel around pretty well? No, not really. I mean,
anytime you leave the Green Zone, you have between 20 and 30 bodyguards with the convoy, and those were private security details. Over the course of 2005, the number of trips that were authorized out of USAID every week went from around an average of 5 a week to around 1 or 2 a week. So you can imagine when you're managing, as the agency was, a $5.2 billion portfolio of reconstruction projects. If you can only get out a couple times a month, you're not really going to be able to see a lot of the work and keep on top of it.
What are Americans getting for their reconstruction dollars?
That's a tough question to answer. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that it hasn't gone swimmingly. We've spent about roughly around $30 billion on the reconstruction in Iraq. And the last report I read, Baghdad was still only getting a few hours a day of power and very little water coming through the pipes. And so for these basic essential services, if we haven't been able to deliver after all of that, it's frustrating, but I'm a little also skeptical about what we have ahead of us in terms of how much more money we're actually going to commit to this.
How does this cycle broken of reconstruction and then those same projects being targeted by those who are trying to force the United States out? I mean, how do you keep putting good dollars after bad in a cycle like that?
Well, it raises a key issue, which is USAID is the main assistance giving arm of the United States people, and by 2005 it got to a point where we couldn't really advertise the projects that we were doing, and so we couldn't really claim credit for all the projects that were functioning.
Because you couldn't advertise about because you didn't want the insurgents to attack.
We didn't want them to get blown up. Yeah. And so in some cases, I know of projects that we didn't claim credit for the sake of the project, but then Sauter claimed credit for it, or other actors throughout the country that had nothing to do with it, frankly.
From this bit of time and space, is it possible to analyze from your close-up experience and know what went wrong?
You know, there are 90 books that are trying to get at what went wrong. I have my own opinions that have to deal with basic issues of getting eyes on projects in terms of personnel changeover. I mean, there's a constant changeover, and it makes it difficult to actually retain the very expensive and bloody lessons that we do learn. But we wouldn't have enough time for me to give you a full accounting of why I think things went wrong. But
well, what's the bottom line for you at this point? I mean, this program is full of people's opinions about where we should go next. The Congress is debating that very question right now. With your on-the-ground experience and your knowledge of how things worked during that year that you were there, what do you think this country should do right now?
Well, if we're going to work on the reconstruction, from my own perspective of what I saw there, we have to have a much more serious commitment of resources and staffing. I don't think that the American public, I don't think that Congress is that willing to give more money when over the last 4 years the money that the vast amount of money that they have given hasn't quite delivered. So in my opinion, you know, unless we're going to significantly commit and modify our approach based on all of the lessons that we've learned, I'm a little bit skeptical as to what the next, what is $1 more billion going to do when we've already spent $30 billion?
Let me ask one other question, and that's sort of the top of the debate. And again, reminding people that you are an Arabist who's studied and worked in the region and speak the language. The overarching goals for going into the country in the first place were deposing Saddam Hussein and also the establishment of a stable, democratic, major state in the region.
In a prosperous Iraq.
Right. Do you agree that those two goals were worthy ones for the larger Arab region?
I don't think anybody would have a problem or a major disagreement with those goals. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to them. I just think that the way that we went in and the way that we conducted ourselves there made them unattainable.
So in essence, you agree with Bill Kristol?
I don't want you to put me on par with my alumni,
but in essence, what he was very critical of the way that the aftermath of the war has been conducted, the reconstruction and also the military operations.
Well, it's becoming a chic sort of Monday morning quarterbacking. I mean, in my opinion, you had one of the most reviled dictators in the world, and somehow in the way that we went into war, we managed to turn the world against our case for war. And something tells me that on a very basic level, we did something wrong in entering Iraq.